And one. Well, hey, Dave Melenda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you this week. I have a question for you. It's actually a yes or no type of thing for you. So, little less thought than normal, but we're cool with that. The question is maybe do any of these sound familiar? Okay. Your team is busy, your sales team is busy, but they're not winning clients. Does that ring a bell to you? Or how about your revenue being unpredictable? That one kind of caught me off guard a little bit. How about somebody that's invested in a vice president of sales or some C-suite director of sales and or an agency and you still feel stuck? That's got to be a tough spot. And the hardest one is the last one, working hard, paddling fast, and going nowhere. And I'm like, man, who's asking me these questions? So I found the guy, and I'm honored to be hanging out with Mark Gordon. How are you today, my friend?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me and sharing your audience with me. I feel really, really lucky to be here.
Absolutely. Super excited. You're the founder of Integrated Go-To Market Solutions. So fill us in on what Integrated Go-To Market Solutions is. Let's start there.
I mean, most simply put, we are a go-to-market consultancy, but we have a very unique approach to how we help small and medium-sized businesses fix their sales and marketing issues. We think those things are very intertwined. Without boring you with a ton of details, I'll just say that my background as a CEO and chief revenue officer. And you see big companies hiring chief revenue officers for a reason. They recognize you need alignment between messaging, product market fit, lead generation, sales execution, revenue technology. And unless you have one person in charge of that, or it's coming from one specific perspective, it's impossible to happen. Either don't, I mean, because there's a salesperson and a marketing person, they're competing for resources, they're competing for influence. And so those things don't always go well. And we bring that alignment back to organizations through 4-month go-to-market transformations. And the results have been really tremendous for our clients.
That's awesome, Mark. What does go-to market mean? Because that we hear it a lot, but does that mean it's pre-done for you? What does that mean when you say go-to market like that?
So it definitely does not mean pre-done for you. In fact, I would say that at the backbone of our entire philosophy for being, that go-to-market needs to be founder or CEO led at all
Okay.
organizations. And I think you'll see some things on our website about product monks, right? This idea that like if we build it, they will come. Um, the leader of the organization, a primary responsibility is revenue. Okay, and so a huge piece of what we do during our 4-month go-to-market transformations is CEO, founder, whoever that is, every single week. That really helps them upskill their knowledge and their ability to figure out what's working and not working within the organization so that they can be a force for revenue. It doesn't mean that they're on sales calls. We don't want founder-led sales necessarily, but we do need founder-led revenue. Now, specifically,
Okay.
what go-to-market means is really is how do you take how do you take the thing that you've built, whether it's a product or service, and simply said, get it into the hands of the people who need it.
Sure.
And there's a lot more to it than that, but obviously, but we think it's alignment in that core four that I mentioned earlier, and I'm sure that we're going to talk more about as we go forward.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to unpack those today, the core four systems, and I'm excited to do that. I love talking about sales. Before we do that, though, we do, like I mentioned to you prior, we have a bunch of people listening right now, Mark, that are really envious of your position, my position, where we have transitioned from corporate America or corporate whatever country they're from into owning your own business. So you had that same scenario where you started in corporate. What kind of was your springboard to jumping into owning your own business? Kind of walk us through that transition if you could.
Well, the first time I did it, it was because in 2008, the company I worked for got wiped out, and I had a little great career going in sales leadership. And I was in the mortgage industry, and every mortgage company got wiped out in 2008. And so I had two choices, which was kind of find another sinking mortgage ship to join or start something fresh that didn't have all those legacy issues on my own. I was in my 20s and I was a little
Sure.
naive and super ambitious. And so I just dove in and went for it. And that was the push that I needed to know that I could. And that company, we built it up to 8 figures in revenue. We had a successful exit. But then I didn't feel this, I don't have this need to be a business owner. So I went and became a number two for a company called Princeton Mortgage for 5 years and took them up to $1 billion a year in sales as the chief revenue officer. And then I kind of did everything I could in the mortgage industry. And so I looked around, honestly, wasn't sure I wanted to do another business again, but I spent a year and a half thinking about what I wanted to do, and everything seemed like a good idea, and nothing seemed like a great idea. And so I started helping my friends and family build their companies, found a ton of great joy in that. And I said, okay, well, what would I do if I for fun, and this was it. And so I decided to go on that entrepreneurial journey. What I will
Okay.
say to somebody else who's thinking about making this move is that the people who start businesses and succeed at it are not smarter than you. They don't have more experience than you. They were bold enough to take the risk, knew that they would feel like they were failing over and over again and just wouldn't quit, right? The ones who succeed, it's really, you're going to have a million days where you feel like it's all falling apart and you have to sign up for that struggle. Um, but you also get to do something potentially where you get to follow your own intuition and feel like the work that you're doing matters and is meaningful both for the people that you're serving and your family in a different way and all the different things that come along with it.
Yeah.
So I guess my best advice is there's never going to be a perfect time. You can wait until the world fires you or your industry falls apart or whatever else it is to take the jump, or you can do it on your own terms. But you know that the joy is in the journey and that you're signing up to do something very difficult, and that's what makes it special. And if you go
Sure.
in with eyes wide open, I think you can overcome anything.
Well, and I think you bring up a really important word there, and it's risk. And there are personalities that are risk averse, and there are personalities that, move towards risk. And so, was risk hard for you? Was it something you enjoyed, look forward to, or was it something that was you were fearful of?
I would say there are two things that made me not that worried about risk. Okay. Um, First of all, one is, I did not grow up wealthy in any way, but my parents did have a house and they had it, and they would let me go and sleep on their couch anytime, right? So I wasn't going to be homeless. And that's like, and by the way, like not everyone has that. So I don't take that for granted. It would not have
Sure,
been a good situation for me to fail, but I would not have starved. Okay.
sure.
That was a real safety net. Um, but the second piece of it is that I'm the kind of person that either I'm all in or I'm not. And
Okay,
I'm not good at working. I do really low quality work, low effort work when I'm not into something. And when I am into it, I'm incredibly focused and really go hard. And so I knew that I wasn't finding something else that somebody else was doing that was energizing me in a way where I was going to be all in. And so it was less risky for me to be all in naked and doing it on my own than to be limping through it with a salary, right? And not that I would have gotten fired. I wouldn't have, my 40% is more than good enough to keep a job, but it's a
sure.
miserable way to go through life giving. I won't waste any time
Yeah.
doing anything halfway. That's not how I'm wired. I'm very programmed to try to see how much I can get done and try to get better every day and push myself. And so, it sounds like prison to me, honestly, to go to work every day for a job I don't care about and collect a paycheck. And so it seemed far less risky to go out and do my own thing than to stay in that sort of an environment, which would have been very demotivating for me.
Wow, that's really well said. And I think that's interesting that risk, you look at it completely different rather than the risk of losing it all. It's the risk of not succeeding or, settling in something that really wasn't that comfortable for you. So
I mean,
that's
we also
fantastic.
do want to point out one other thing real quick. So I
Yeah,
think, 'cause I heard
yeah,
somebody from a different country talk about this. I think they're from Italy or something. They're like, listen, in my country, if you start a business and you fail, there's like a stigma and it sticks with you for the rest of your life. And
sure.
whether that's true or not, that was their perception. We
Yep,
live in a country where almost all of the people that have succeeded have had massive failures, lots of them public, and I certainly have had my share as well. And I've never had to declare bankruptcy, thank God, but like we have bankruptcy laws in this country that allow you to start over. And so like
right.
yes, there's risk in like it's going to be uncomfortable, you're going to have some rough days, but like it's most people who fail here do not end up on the street, right? I mean, we have real social safety nets in place here that prevent those things from happening. And so, I think if you position risk as I can't have any less today than I did yesterday or tomorrow
Yeah,
than I do today, then like yes, everything's really scary. But if you say, hey, like risk reward, there's been no society or country in the history of of planet Earth that has made it easier to take risks than this one right now. And so
Yeah.
you have to fight those own demons in your head. You're the yes, there's real things on the line, and social pressures and relationships, but like it's not failure is not fatal.
Yeah. Wow, that's cool. And you have a tool for anybody that might be thinking about this. So fill us in on that tool for people that are thinking about maybe starting their own business.
Yeah, I mean, we have a course, right? And a lot of people sell courses, and I know people have mixed history with that. Ours was specifically designed to help people who do not understand how to market and sell a service or a product go through an 8-week class where there's 48 modules online that you could follow along with. And each one of them comes with an AI build. It prompts you to build for yourself so that you can really build this library of AI to make it your coach long term and help you grow your business. So it's
Okay.
very like state of the art that way. And it comes with a live class with me every single week for those 8 weeks. And you can actually stay in those classes for 4 months, plus a Slack
Nice.
community you get to join where you're with a bunch of experts who can answer your questions in real time. Like, what should I do to get leads, this thing, that thing. So we have this whole community specifically designed to help people take the leap and not feel alone doing it, or not feel like there's not a playbook, because there is a playbook, by the way.
Yeah.
And as somebody who just started this company from scratch 13 months ago, yeah, I mean, the first 3 or 4 months, are bumpy. It's all bumpy, but like, it's not hard to get traction if you do certain things the right way. But there are these like milestones you have to hit in your credibility journey that either you know what they are and you have a map for them, or you don't. And so that's what we lay out for people is how do you build your public credibility score, right? And we actually have a scoring system for this that measures you, your website, your public presence, and gives you a score for like where you rank. And then we
Okay.
give you the tools to get that score up, because you need to have a credibility score that gives somebody confidence in paying you for your product or service.
Wow.
And I think we have a really good formula for that. And again, doesn't I'm not saying that we make it easy, but we make it clear.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a big question that a lot of people have is once they've determined they want to start a business, they're like, okay, what do I do next? And naivety is like just, if we build it, they will come type of thing, put up a website, buy a brick and mortar, whatever it is. But as soon as that first day of business, everybody thinks there's going to be a long line of people waiting to come. And maybe if you have an incredibly unique product, but the vast majority of things probably have already been thought of. So it's one of those things that it's great to have a playbook, like you said, because otherwise you have no clue if you're doing it the right way or wrong way. So if people want to get that, Mark, where do they go? What's the best spot for people to find that?
Yeah, IGTMS.com. So IGTMS.com, integrated go-to-market solutions. If you already have a website for your business or you thought of building one, you can get a free version of that score I just told you about, where we give you kind of
Sure.
your public credibility score, which is really
Okay.
like, hey, if your perfect customer found you, what would they think of you? And we give that a score on a 1 to 100 scale, and then we give you 25 tips based on whatever we find that are very customized for how you can improve that, all free. And then yeah, if you're interested in the course, we hop on a call, you and me, we go through it and really see if it's a fit for you. Because I may tell you like, hey, listen, you're not ready, or I may be like, you should have done this, 6 months ago.
Yeah.
But we'll hop on a call and do a real assessment of like, what are your goals and what's the best way to get there. And you leave that half-hour call with a lot of advice either way. And if you decide it's the right fit for you, great.
Awesome. So then fast forward your life ahead, you decide you don't want to be, in corporate and you start this integrated go-to-market solutions type piece. So what was like the next step? You had this concept, you knew what you didn't want to do, and you had this concept. How did you transition into sales and core four systems? What did that transition look like?
It's a great question. So what actually happened is, when I was helping one of those friends build their business, um, it was a company that had come a long way already, but they had a new product they were trying to go to market with. And everybody in this company had an MBA, went to the best schools, super smart, super hardworking, really good people. And when I got there, I started like spending every day there for months. And I kept going like, what do we do and who do we do it for? What is the problem we solve? And like I kept getting like nobody can answer me, or like they'd be like, well, here's what it's supposed to do, but doesn't do it yet. And I was like, wow, like this is so weird. And then I went to
Yeah,
a conference in that same industry and I met all these other people that had products and they were all having the same problem. And these are guys like Harvard MBA, Wharton, this, that, like nobody could do it. And so I spent 20 years in the mortgage industry. In the United States,
sure.
there are 2,000 mortgage companies all selling the exact same product at the exact same rate. It is the exact same price. It is a sales and marketing knife fight every single day. And if you don't have these things perfect, you're out of business. And so
Yeah.
I took my 20 years of fighting that knife fight every day and winning at it, and now started bringing to these other industries. And I was like, guys, you don't have these four things aligned. It kept coming back to these four things, and I was like, I think we should start calling this the core four. We trademarked it, and so we, but it really was that simple. It's like you need to know how to talk about your product and who it's for, what problem you solve. You need to have a lead generation strategy for getting that messaging in front of the right people at the right time so they raise their hand and say, I want to learn more. You need to be able to convert that person into a customer, right? You just make that sale. And then you need to have revenue technology aligned with those first three things so they all work in sync and the same way. So you have alignment that makes the boat all row in the same direction. And we find that when we have that alignment, moving forward becomes really easy. And until you have that alignment, the boat's just spinning in circles.
So it's messaging, lead generation, sales execution, and revenue technology. So the first thing that pops into my head in this scenario, Mark, is do you need all four? Can I live with maybe two or three? Or is it like you said, we're only rowing with half of it and we're just kind of rowing in circles? Is that why many teams are busy, but they're really not winning clients or growing because they don't have all four in there? Or what if I don't have all four?
Well, I guess it depends on how big you are, what your ambitions are, and how fast you want to go. What I would say messaging is really messaging in product market fit. I think things are really hard when you have that wrong. And I think almost all companies, believe it or not, like 90% of companies you run into need real improvement when it comes to messaging and product market fit. I'm sure you've run into founders before that they make their next product improvement decision based on their loudest customers' feedback. And that's a really dangerous way to run a company. It ends up in failure more often than not. And so knowing what you do and who you do it for and how to talk about that is mission critical. Now,
Okay.
depending on the specific industry, can you get away with building a business without alignment on these things? Sure, it's just a lot harder. It's rolling a boulder up a hill. You better have a whole
Yeah.
lot of other things going for you, like some really strong people pushing it to make that work. But when you get it right, it's like walking alongside a self-propelled lawnmower, and that's a very different way to mow the grass than pushing a ride. The other way is like pushing a ride along mower from the back, right? Like you know. And so
Yeah.
I think that's the best way I can describe it. So like yeah, so I can point to a million examples of companies that have made it to a million, 2 million, 5 million, 10 million, 30 million in some cases because they have a unique product or they're in a unique niche industry where there's no competition. Or they have a really charismatic founder who's just amazing at sales and is able to work around the other three things. But for the most part, I can just say things get a lot easier very quickly if you have all four.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, we're going to take a break. When we come back, I really want to start with that revenue technology. So I'm going to kind of do it backwards because that was the one that I'm guessing most people listening right now, Mark, they probably feel their messaging is okay, always could improve. They're probably in some type of lead gen deal. Hopefully, we'll again give some value there. A lot of people are on that sales execution journey, but I'm guessing a lot of people miss that revenue technology piece. So we're going to take a break. When we come back, I'd like to unpack that piece for our listeners. So we'll be right back. Welcome back. Honored to be hanging out with Mark Gordon, the founder of Integrated Go-to-Market Solutions. And we are deep into a discussion about sales. And I love that messaging, lead gen, sales execution, and revenue technology. We're trying to, you know, compare where you're at, the listener right now, to these four pieces. And just what struck me in that discussion, Mark, was that revenue technology. Can you kind of unpack what that means? Because I'm guessing those two words are new put together for a lot of people listening.
Yeah, I mean, in its most basic sense, it's like your CRM, right? You know what I mean? And I mean, and that's it, it certainly includes a lot more than that. And in the age of I would say that most companies should be really working towards custom built solutions that are uniquely situated to their organizational needs. But at the end of the day, depending on what stage you're at, it's really what is the technology that you're using to either stay in front of your customers on a regular basis, capture the data of the customers that you should be in front of. How are you qualifying who's a good lead and not a good lead? Anything that you would have that is either a software as a service or a custom built AI design program that helps you either find the right customers, get messaging in front of those customers to attract them, stay in front of those customers on a regular basis, and or capture what your sales team is doing and give them real-time feedback so they can improve. And so it can be, if you're using HubSpot and you're using every tool in that bag, you can spend tens of millions of dollars a year doing that and take this thing to levels that would blow your mind, where it's like you can have an AI sales team now. But at the minimum, it's tracking is figuring out who you should be in front of, making sure you get in front of them, and then tracking what's working and not working.
So are the days of the coveted or nasty spreadsheet, are those pretty much done? Because I'm seeing a lot of people still utilizing a spreadsheet for their CRM, for their tracking purposes. Does that work, or are we really needing to get to the next level in this?
So my answer might surprise you, but what I would say is it really depends on what you're trying to build. If you're a
Okay.
solopreneur doing your own sales and you like your spreadsheet, keep it. And I mean
Okay.
that, right? Like there
Yeah,
are there are a million reasons not to, right? But I would say that if it's working for you and you're not looking to scale and you don't need a bunch of visibility into what everybody else is doing, then like don't complicate your life and don't spend money on things you don't need.
sure.
Um, if you are going to have a sales team and you're going to have other people doing these things, you have to assume that they are not going to be the type of people that are going to be able to figure all this stuff out on their own. And you want to be able to measure what's working and not working and have the guidance of that revenue technology. I'm also going to
Okay.
say this because I think it's a really important thing. There's a reason it's fourth on our list because I've
Okay.
never once heard a company say, man, we were really struggling, but once we figured out that CRM, everything changed for us. I've never heard it. Okay.
Right?
So while revenue technology is a tool and it can be a differentiator, especially if you're using it for um, identifying who your ideal customers are and getting messaging in front of them, because I actually think the two biggest movers in our core four, the ones that are easiest to change someone's life overnight, are messaging and product market fit and lead generation. And I'll explain why. And there's a reason why I have those two first.
Sure.
Um, but I do think it can be a lift. I think it's necessary as you go. I think it can save you tons of time and money as you get going and learn from it. But it's also not to get from 0 to 1, it's not going to be your differentiator most of the time.
Okay. Gotcha. So, you were talking about messaging and lead gen is the two most important pieces. So again, I see a bunch of blind spots here where people think that they are doing great in their messaging or they think they're doing great in their lead gen. Do you kind of come alongside somebody and then look at what they have and then give them options to move around? I'm trying to understand where integrated go-to market solutions fits into this for somebody listening right now that might be struggling with their sales. So let's just kind of
Yeah,
say someone's struggling right now, they're listening. Where do you come alongside them? Where do you jump in? What does that look like?
yeah. So I mean, blank slate. If I'm coming to do a 4 month transformation for your company, the first 3 weeks are me doing deep interviews with your team, your customers, your referral partners, anyone else in your organization to figure out what your messaging should be. And what I mean
Okay.
by that is a lot of companies that do messaging and branding will like look at the market and be like, this is what your messaging and branding should be. We're going to make it this. The problem is if it's not authentic to the company, it doesn't match who they actually are and how they actually do things and what their strengths and weaknesses are, it can actually break a company. You can get it really wrong. Your customers feel lied to because now your messaging is one thing, and when we interact with you, it's something very different. We make sure
Okay.
we have messaging that's very authentic to and captures who a company actually is, and then we make sure that that messaging is eighth grade proof, meaning that if you can't, my daughter's going into eighth grade, she is not a business person. If you call her and she can't understand what you do in 2 sentences, you have a messaging problem. And if you just thought in your head, well, you don't understand my industry, you're already lying to yourself. Okay.
Yeah.
Because if
Gotcha.
if it requires industry expertise for somebody to understand what you do, you are now putting the burden of that on somebody else. And you may think it's very obvious to you. You're probably very wrong. And when we do those interviews, that's what we find. And what we find is that the companies out there that can explain what they do in 2 sentences while somebody's riding next to them in an elevator at an eighth grade level, those are the
Yeah.
ones that everything else gets easier for. And again,
Okay.
90% of companies, I think, need significant messaging help. So if everybody isn't like, as soon as you say it, like, oh my God, I need to work with you, whatever, if your target market isn't like, oh my God, of course I need to do this, then your messaging could be improved. The reason why lead generation is number two, coming off of that, is that first of all, lead generation is very difficult when you have poor messaging, and it becomes pretty easy when you have the right messaging, especially if you have the right lead capture tools around it.
Sure.
But here's what I'll say is that company with too many leads has a really hard time failing. And a company with not enough leads has a really hard time succeeding, regardless of anything else that's going on with that company. And so if you said to me, like, hey, if I can only fix one thing in my organization, what would it be? It's like find a way to get more leads. Find a way to get more leads at a price that makes sense, right? Where you have where your customer acquisition cost, which is what we measure for marketing and sales, makes sense. Because extra leads can buy you time to fix everything else. And not
Okay.
enough leads is almost impossible to overcome with any of the other four. And so,
Sure.
and I can give you real examples of this and we can walk through it, but it's actually pretty
Sure.
obvious when you think about it. Show me a
Yeah.
company that's struggling. I'll show you a company that needs more leads almost every single time.
Okay.
And then, by the way, this is what's really weird is that we have a million marketing agencies out there, and I'm sure you've probably interviewed people who run them. They're all well intended. But the truth is, 90% of marketing engagements fail when it comes to lead generation. And the reason is because you don't have product market fit in messaging and you don't have sales execution ironed out. And so you can do a bunch of lead generation, but if it's not to the right people and it's not aligned with your sales team, it doesn't work. And even more than that, actually, people just don't even end up raising their hand when you're doing that outreach if you don't have that messaging right. And if you don't have that public credibility score we talked about earlier in a good place, right? You get in front of someone, they look you up and they go, I'm not working with those guys. And that happens way more than you think.
Sure. Okay.
So that's why that alignment is so important. And I know I'm a little all over the place. I
No, you're
apologize.
good. I'm just curious about the lead thing. I just want to get your take on this because I feel like there's good leads and bad leads. And I think a blind spot for some business owners is, you know, go to the mall, put a kiosk in the mall and just have a $25,000 giveaway because it's going to fill your plastic bin full of names that are probably pretty weak in nature. And I'm just curious, are there good leads and bad leads in your mind, just so that people aren't just out there getting leads, but they're really getting the right type of lead? Does that matter in your system?
So it varies widely depending on what you're selling, the price point that you're
Sure,
selling at, et cetera, et cetera. But a good lead is anyone on planet Earth that has the problem I solve and is willing to talk to me. That's it. They
sure,
don't need to know they don't even need to know they have the problem. They don't need to know that I have the solution. If
sure.
they have the problem I can solve and they're willing to talk to me, that's a great lead.
Okay,
If I know they have the problem I solve and they're not necessarily willing to talk to me, that's an okay lead. A bad lead is a lead that where I'm about to talk to somebody that may or may not or probably does not actually have the problem I solve or cannot
yeah,
afford my solution. So if
sure,
somebody does not have the problem that you solve and does not have the money to afford your solution, that's a bad lead. And so I think you start thinking about it like in those very simple terms, right? What I want to know as a business owner is who has my problem and has the money to afford to solve my solution. And if you can
gotcha,
give me a list of those people, my life's going to be really good, right?
gotcha.
And until I have a list of those people, then my life's going to be really hard.
Awesome. Okay. So the messaging, like you mentioned, is obviously needs to align with the company, and I think that we could spend hours on each one of these. So I want to be cognizant of your time. There's a
I can always
messaging
come
issue.
back.
Yeah, exactly, and we'd love to have you. We'll get you back again. The lead generation is second. What do you mean for sales execution? What do those words mean for you?
Again, it depends on the product or service, but normally, most of our clients have what we call a complex sales process, meaning that it requires a salesperson, right? If you are selling, headphones on Amazon, we're probably not the right consultancy for you, right? Like that's just like not our wheelhouse. We're talking about selling consultancy services, agency services. We're talking about selling uh software as a service products, fintech products, products that are either B2B or very high ticket B2C,
Okay.
that require a salesperson in the loop. So we talk about sales execution, which is how do you take somebody from we know this person has the problem that we solve and the money to solve it, afford our solution, and get them to pay us for it, right? Like that is as simple as that. Like, okay, cool. This person over here has the problem we solve and they have the money for our solution. How do we get them to give us that money and to pay us for it? And so that's sales execution.
Okay.
Often, but here's what I'll say is that if again, I've never heard a company that was like, man, we were really struggling, but when we brought in so and so sales training, it changed everything for us permanently. It's usually not how it works, right? You might get a little bit of a bump for a while. The difference between a good salesperson and a bad salesperson, usually the difference between closing 22% or 35%. It's a huge difference over time. It changes your numbers, your metrics of the company, but it's not like a bad salesperson sells nothing and a great salesperson sells everything, right? So you have that 50% lift, right? That comes from having a good salesperson versus a bad salesperson. But again, generally, if you don't have enough leads, you're working on the wrong problem.
Wow. Well, and I'm guessing that companies spend a lot of time on the messaging. I mean, it feels like it just naturally goes less and less. They spend a little less on the lead gen, a little less on the sales process or on the sales execution because I mean, we hire salespeople all the time for our clients and help along that journey. Very rarely do people hiring sales professionals look for what type of system do you have? Do you know that, whether it's whatever type of system that's out there? And I'm just curious, most people aren't born to sell, although this is a interesting question. Do you think that it's a easy something we can easily train people on? Do we feel like some people have it and some people don't? I'm kind of mixed on that. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on oh, do all people have the ability to sell just without any type of training?
So ability is a weird word to use, but I would say the vast majority of people have no business making sales their profession, right? I mean that it is whether it's doable or not, or trainable or not. I mean, yes, the short answer is I had people in my call centers who barely got by for a year and a half, and then one day it clicked and they became top salespeople.
Okay.
95% of the time, the people that were going to be good were pretty good in the first couple of months, and we're good from there, and they either got it or they don't. I would
Yeah.
say that I grew up in a house where I had to learn to sell very early. My mom was all over me, and I wasn't going to do the things that she wanted me to do. And so in order for me to get out of my house, I had to be able to sell her on why it didn't matter that my room wasn't clean, or that I would do it later, or whatever else it was, because like, and I had to sell my teachers and giving me the grade because I didn't do the homework. I mean, I was selling from birth, right? Like that's just,
Sure.
I believed I could change everyone's mind. That's really what it came down to. And then I worked at it and became better and better and better at it. And I made most of my money in the mortgage industry training salespeople. So do I think it can be trained? Yes, but I think you need to have an aptitude for it first. I think, and then I also think you need to have the personality that's willing to go through the pain that's involved. And I'll also
Yeah.
say this: the biggest failure small businesses make is they hire salespeople and then they give them something else other than sales that's part of their job. And they think, well, they're commissioned. They'll do the sales part. They'll focus on the money. And the answer is no, they won't. Because as
Yeah.
human beings, even when we're built for sales, if you give us two choices, and one is I have to go face rejection, and the other one is I get to feel productive without facing rejection, they are always going to avoid the rejection. Like we are hardwired as a species to avoid rejection. And so the only way you can have a salesperson that succeeds is to say that nothing else matters other than your ability to go fight through this rejection. And then if they
Sure.
get that really narrow focus and they're tough enough to do it and they work hard at it and they want to go through that pain and they understand the victory that comes at the end and they're motivated by that, then yeah, you have a chance.
Yeah.
But so I would say is that if you can, training people is great, rehabilitating them is a fatal flaw that business owners can get into. And so if I feel like I have to rehabilitate you to get you to become a salesperson, you should move on from that person. If I think you need a little bit of training here or there and I'm immediately seeing a turnaround in results, great. But every ounce of time and energy you spend training in your organization, if you put that towards recruiting, you'd be getting a much better return on that investment.
That's a great point. Is there anything you specifically look for if you were in that hiring mode, or for someone listening right now that is in the market for a sales professional? Are there any things in specific that you look for, personality traits or previous successes or demeanor? Is there anything that stands out for you in this mark that would give you the green light to hire versus not?
So I think this could like be its own book is the first answer, but I'll just share it this way. Number one predictor of future results is past results. So I am
Gotcha.
absolutely looking for people, maybe not, I mean, if the that are most core, they need to have real history of becoming successful, having above average results over a significant period of time in difficult situations. And the more correlated that is, the thing they've overcome more correlated is to what you're hiring for, the better, right? So I used to hire a lot of entry level salespeople, so I was looking
Okay.
for other things that they had been successes at in life where they had uncommon results, and that was usually the best indicator of future success. Again, the second thing that we're looking for though is a sense of want to have to gritty identity being tied to finding a way to succeed. Okay, so there are just certain, and by this is rare, but there are certain people you meet them and like they have an engine where like they are just always trying to win at whatever they're doing, and that becomes very important to them. And if you could
Yeah.
put somebody in that seat, that's a characteristic I'm looking for. So like I would go ask college professors. You have all these classes. Like who are the students that are just like constantly? Who are your tryhards? Show me your
Yeah.
tryhard. Like the one who's like always do the. Oh, there's extra credit. They're doing it. Oh, there's this. They're always like they're almost like butt kissers at that point, right? Like I
Yeah.
want those people in a sales role because if they can handle the rejection of failure, and that's a real thing too, because some of those people are not used to failing, but if they can
Sure.
handle a little bit of failure and they're the tryhards, those people succeed in sales roles. Because again, this is a job that requires you to walk through pain every day. And right. And
Yeah.
there are different ways you can process that pain, but it is real rejection. And so those are the two things I'm looking at, past track record and this like need to be the winner or the best at whatever they're doing. Those are two
Sure.
really great indicators of success.
Wow, that's great. And we do a ton of work with personality profile disc, and in there, there is a version that you can ask if a person can sell, and it gives you a really good indication of their personality. Is it aligned with the sales position that you're looking at? The two things we look at, which are right in alignment with you, is I can tell from an assessment, are they highly competitive people? Because if they are, that's going to definitely be a win for us. And the other one, which is interesting, is urgency. Because when we find sales professionals that have high urgency, they're way more successful than when they have low urgency. Their follow up is better, their prospecting is better, their closing, everything about their sales execution is better because they have this urgency of like, we got to get this done, and ASAP means as soon as possible, not as slow as practical. So I love that we're in alignment with that. What's the real reason that most sales teams underperform? If we look at the opposite of that, we've been talking about as we start to land the plane today, we've been talking about the successful person or team. What is an underperforming team? Why do most people, or why do sales teams that you see underperform? Is there anything that rises to the top for them?
Yeah, I mean, poor product market fit, right? I mean, I think is like the number one. If your whole team is failing, right, it's like it's usually either really poor sales culture, and we can talk about what that means, or a lack of clarity around product market fit. And again, you see this. I'll have a marketing agency come to me, and they do 2 million a year in revenue, and they have 40 services on their website that they supposedly do. Nobody on earth can do 40 things well. Certainly, your $2 million marketing agency is not doing 40 things well, right? You need
Sure.
to niche down. Now, I'm not saying you can't do those 40 things for your existing clients if they ask for them, whatever else it is, but you should not be advertising that you do them. You need to narrow your focus. Say, here are the two things we do. We do them better, faster, cheaper than everybody else because of our experience. Maybe do the industries that specialize. And people believe that they can get an exceptional result from you and you can niche down and charge more. When you try to be everything for everybody, you're setting your sales team up to fail, right? And you're setting your execution team up to fail. So I think really it's lack of sales culture or lack of product market fit or a lack of leads, right? If they don't know who to call or who they should be helping, those are the issues. Um,
Yeah,
but again, I'm going to say this again because I think it's important. If you have
sure.
limited time and resources, getting your lead generation right and hiring the best people, spending your time on recruiting the best people is a better use of your time than trying to train everybody up to something that they are not, right? We do not want to rehabilitate when we go through this
Yeah.
process.
Wow. Well, that's a great word, rehab, where it's like, and that's sometimes the challenge is a lot of people bring baggage with them. And so our goal is to not have to spend a ton of time investing in that, just fixing them to get them back to ground zero. And then you have to move them forward. So I love that concept. What would your tip of the day be, Mark? Maybe it's something we covered already. Maybe it's something that we haven't. But what would your tip of the day be today for anybody listening?
My tip of the day is if you're running an organization, very difficult to see the opportunity around you when you're in your business working on the day to day and bringing in a second set of eyes, someone that you know consulted, even going to our website and taking that free MRI report that'll list out for you the blind spots you have about, you think you have great messaging, cool. We'll explain to you exactly where the opportunities are for you to improve it. But getting help is so under, and I think oftentimes the personality types of people that start businesses are the ones who are used to figuring it out on their own. They're gritty, they're tough, they think there's some badge of honor, and it's like putting your head down and figuring out a relative solution. And when I say easy, I mean in terms of the amount of effort that you'd have to put into it once you've discovered it, that will lead to better results. And it almost always takes somebody from outside your organization to come in and point that out with a fresh set of eyes. And so my tip of the day is if you're stuck, get help, get a second set of eyes, join a founders community, do whatever you got to do. But usually you'll miss some of the really obvious stuff if you try to figure it out on your own.
That's awesome. Well said. And I think, like you said, a lot of entrepreneurs just naturally think they have to go on their own and do it on their own. And whether you find a group, CEO roundtable, whether you hire Mark, whatever it is, but why go through this alone? I think that that's really powerful. So, if people want to learn more about you, IGTMS is the best spot for them to go and connect with you. Is that the best place for somebody to go, Mark?
Absolutely. Or you can find me on LinkedIn. If you just Google Mark D. Gordon and integrated go to market solutions, you'll find me right on LinkedIn. We're very active there. Also, Instagram, Mark D. Gordon. But yeah, if you hit up igtms.com first, it'll also, be able to direct to all those different places. And we have a ton of information there and a ton of different case studies you can kind of see. But whatever part of your entrepreneurial journey you're on, up to 50 million in revenue, um, we have really great solutions. And again, we're happy to hop on a call with anyone free of charge and see if we think it's a fit.
Awesome. And again, it's igtms.com for integrated go-to market solutions. Mark, thanks for hanging out with us today. Thank you so much for helping us. Hopefully, if those things sounded familiar that we talked about, hopefully Mark gave some good feedback to you, some good ideas to be able to at least move the needle. Maybe it's a call with Mark. Maybe it's again finding taking that free assessment. Maybe it's all the way back to what we said at the beginning, and he talked about the tools that they have as a class to be able to work through if you're just considering jumping in on your own. So, Mark, thanks for hanging out with us. Thank you so much for your knowledge and congrats on only 18 months in. Feels like you've been doing this your whole life. So, definitely a fit for you and can't wait to keep learning from you.
I appreciate it. Thank you again for sharing your audience with me. And I hope we delivered some good, valuable stuff out of it.